Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundel. Today I'm going to be talking about a potential for a karmic connection that can unfold in year 2023 for all of us. This can be in a sexual context, a romantic one, much more to do with business, employment, or even starting our own enterprise. So why is this? Well, it's because of the conjunction. This is when two planets are exactly side by side between Venus, the planet of relating but also money, and also Pluto, the planet of transformation, in the very worldly sign of Capricorn. Now this becomes exact on the 1st of January at 5:24 a.m. Universal Central Time. It has been building up for some while within 3 degrees, which I think gives it a real sense of influence. But Venus is going to be escaping pretty soon on the 2nd of January into the sign of Aquarius. So this passing event may seem fleeting, but it's actually going to play out in its influence right through the next 12 months. And that's what I want to share with you. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me. I've had 29 million views on YouTube, but if you care to subscribe, I'd be honoured to have your company. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. If you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for joining me once more. And if you want your personal horoscope forecast for the coming year, from the time you buy it, say you bought it on the 21st of January, you would get 12 months from that point. But you're also in my special package of 30% off. Get your life roadmap and your 3 PDFs of your zodiac stars for the year ahead, your Chinese and Indian horoscopes too. They're completely free. Please see the link below. So this important karmic event, what are the archetypes of the 2 central players? Venus governs 2 signs. First of all, the sign of Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign and very much to do with stability, a constance of purpose, and that gives us the platform from which we can live our lives on. But Venus's influence of Taurus also gives us an appreciation of good food and wine, sensual touch when it comes to romance. And if there is a degree of financial stability, that obviously is an easier thing to have in a relationship than really being up against it. But Venus also governs the sign of Libra, which is an air sign and cardinal, so much more of a leader, but also can be very gracious. It likes to interact in a pleasant, charming way. So it's about relating. So this is absolutely important. So the combination of those 2 energies are now shining their light through the sign of Capricorn, which is the 10th zodiac sign, but of course is ruled by the slightly chilly and stern Saturn. So this combination here of Venus in the sign of Capricorn is much more worldly, I feel, and the relationships that can play out over the next year can be in some ways to do with business, they can be to do with enterprise, they can be to do with a reset of our relationship to the material world, because Pluto is very much about transformation. But over the year since 2008 and Pluto's been in Capricorn, what we've seen is the best side of Capricorn, which is a culmination of a lot of patient, persistent effort to build up something of substance that gives us a real feeling that we have a presence in the world, whether it's in terms of the property we live in, the job we have, perhaps some of the material benefits of that hard work. What's happened since 2008 is that Pluto's been working away at a deep level, and it's given some people the opportunity for enlightenment by rejecting a full-out embrace of consumerism. But other people have really embraced Pluto to the extent that greed and corruption have really become almost the norm, certainly amongst government and certainly amongst certain governments in the world, there has been a much more authoritarian tone that's been developing over those years. And that's partly because Pluto likes to control and repress opposition, particularly in the rather cool sign of Capricorn, where authority, tradition, and the big structure tries to dominate the needs of the individual. So when we put those two influences together, at the turn of the year, that solar return influence, as I mentioned before, will echo out right through the next 12 months. So the thing that's going to be tested around our relationships, whether it is with our friends, our neighbours, our loved one if we have one, or our relationship with ourselves if we are not involved in a relationship at the moment, or with a line manager or our employer or our customers. We're all relating to somebody all of the time. And when you put Venus and Pluto together, you have a heightened passion and intensity, because the secretiveness, remember Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio, the secretiveness of Pluto is in some ways being challenged by the sweetness of Venus's rulership of Libra. And also Taurus energy of Venus obviously appreciates a degree of stability. So there may be some offers made in the next 12 months that actually seem very alluring and very hard to resist. But the thing we need to understand about those motivations, not just the motivations of others, but the motivations of ourselves, is that we're not being leveraged into something behind a facade of charm, Venus, that actually is all about power. And that's Pluto. So that's the central theme. And I think we are seeing more and more stuff being uncovered about tax havens, offshore tax havens. We had the Panama Papers were revealed. So that kind of stuff, and sexual impropriety or taxation impropriety by people who have been in a position of great power, there is going to be more revelations around them in the next year. And however much they might try to charm people, charm their acolytes into, well, it was because of this and it was because of that, there will be investigative journalists determined to quarry down into what really happened and reveal the truth, to shine a light into the darkness which can be Pluto. And no amount of charm that's manifested will prevent that. But equally, there could be that fated connection that we experience. Now, it's going to be tested pretty early in January, because Venus moves into the sign of Aquarius on the 2nd, and it is going to be aligning with Saturn later in the month. So if you met someone in the run-up to the festive period and it's, being pretty hot, because that's entirely possible with Venus and Pluto, there are no half measures with this combination. It's either all in or all out. So if there is someone who's really captured your imagination in a very mesmeric way, you're going to find out by the end of January whether this relationship is going to stick around or not, because the reality of other parts of the relationship beyond the intensity of the sexual chemistry, that will start to be revealed quite quickly. Now, I'm going to share on screen with you now the event chart for this particular combination, Venus and conjunct Pluto. And I've used a different wheel this time. I've used equal house from the vernal point. And you can see the vernal point, of course, is 0 degrees Aries, and that's where the zodiac begins. So I want us to be able to reflect and relate to this event in terms of how the zodiac is informing us of it, how it plays out for each of us and our zodiac sign or our ascendant. I've done a deep dive year 2023 forecast for each sign, but unlike some other forecasts that are out there, this breaks the year down into each of the months of the year. So you get 12 individual forecasts within the yearly, and that shows how things are evolving as we get the big changes come in Saturn on the 7th of March, the 23rd of March, Pluto moving into Aquarius for 11 weeks. We've got 2 lunations in Aries. We've got Jupiter moving into Taurus on the 16th of May. We've got the North Node moving back into Aries for the first time in 17 years in July. And of course, we've got the eclipse of the 21st of April, conjunct Jupiter in Aries, and also the solar eclipse in the sign of Libra, governed by Venus, which occurs on the 14th of October. So I really explore all of those events and also Venus's long journey through the sign of Leo through the summer months in the Northern Hemisphere. So please see the link beneath this video where you can really grapple with what's coming up for your zodiac sign or ascendant in much greater detail than I can share here. So on the screen now you can see that Venus and Pluto are at 27 degrees 39 minutes, but based on this chart in the 10th house, which makes them very visible. Visible in the sense that we can see their energy. So someone may emerge over the next year in a public forum. Perhaps it will be someone in a political role, perhaps someone that comes through a more social or show-busy role, who's actually going to really raise their profile in quite a considerable way. And this person could be a force for good, but not necessarily exclusively so, because the conjunction, different to the square and the opposition, can be a little bit of a mixed bag. It can be for the good, it can be more challenging, whereas the square between Venus and Pluto and the opposition are often much more likely to be to do with that leverage. In other words, using people for sex or money, just putting it really bluntly. But you can see in this particular chart, there's a few things to look out for beyond the collective that's in the sign of Capricorn, which of course includes the retreating Mercury and also the Sun. The Sun forges a great link with the North Node, for example, also in the Earth sign of Taurus, which of course is governed by Venus. And we also have the Moon in Taurus, and the Moon loves being in Taurus. It's exalted here, and it's very close to the North Node. So that's suggesting both those links, the Moon and the North Node, to the Sun, that we can transform our approach to resources, but we do need to change. How do we need to change? Because of course it's Uranus in the sign of Taurus is pushing us all to approach our resources in a fresh and different way, and that is also in a broader trine with the Sun. So using resources more imaginatively is something we all will need to do to deal with the cost of living crisis that we're all experiencing. But remember, Venus is about relating. And if we look at where the descendant is in this particular chart, it's at 4 degrees 37 in Gemini, and it's conjunct the retreating Mars in the 3rd house of the solar chart. So this is really interesting. And this suggests that although we are asked to weigh up the benefits of any kind of relationship this year very carefully with Venus's combination with Pluto, see the upside, maybe see the downside. When we've got Mars in the mix next to the descendant, which is very much to do with relating, so it's very much in keeping with the energies of Venus, that brings a rashness to the situation and a potential impetuousness. And also Mars is in a quincunx with the Sun. So it's going to not necessarily be easy to make decisions in a patient and considered way, because Mars can see us try to force the pace, be a bit too impatient, to be frank. And of course with Mercury very close to Venus and Pluto in its retrograde, the power of the message, however stable and conservative it seems to be, I think that could be compromised by the urgency of Mars, which also is the opposite energy to the energy of Venus because of its rulership of Aries, and therefore when Mars is in the sign of Libra, it's in its detriment. So that's making us a little bit more excitable. But you can also see that at 1 degree in Libra, there's the midheaven. So how we feel about relationships is also going to be quite close to the surface. So this is suggesting that when it comes to our worldly interactions, the more we can learn from Venus's energy of trying to find areas of interest and commonality and celebrating those, rather than focusing on what's different, and most of all focusing too much on the material plane, that can be very helpful to us. The other thing that struck me about this chart is that the ascendant is in Sagittarius, which is very free-spirited and very much in the mode of going for it. It's very mutable and it's moving quickly, whereas the energy of Capricorn is steadier. It's not necessarily got that sense of urgency. So that could throw up a different kind of energy. Also, Jupiter, you can see, is right on the vernal point at 1 degree in Aries, and therefore is opposite the 7th house cusp. We can go into this year with a sense of optimism that, if we just really get stuck in and really are determined to really see the upside of situations, the fact that Jupiter's very close to the IC, how we feel about things, that's interesting because that's quite fiery. So that's asking us to listen to our feelings, but the midpoint and also Neptune are in the 12th house. So tuning into our more spiritual dimension in order to steer those more worldly decisions, whether it is around business, money, assets, property, being an entrepreneur, or it is in a more romantic dimension or a sexual one, listening to our sixth sense is very important. So I hope that gives you a flavour of what the wheel represents. But just going back to that combination between Venus and Pluto, as I mentioned before, there's no middle ground with this aspect. You're either in or you're not. So if you're in a relationship which does give you the material security that is important in life, but it's not feeding your soul, the transformational and changing energies of Pluto could push you to make a decision to leave that relationship this year. You're also going to be wanting to give and receive a lot of loyalty. So our relationships take on a much higher vibration. We're not going to be willing to put up with something that isn't quite right. But it can draw us towards people who we do find very compelling to be with, even if we don't quite understand why. So there could be an attraction to someone we don't even like, but we may find them almost irresistible. But also in an existing relationship, if there has been a tendency to secretiveness or power struggles, jealousy, these kind of energies are almost bound to show themselves over the next 12 months. But if you do meet someone for the first time, don't be surprised if it really does sweep you off your feet. I mentioned that before, that if you've met someone in the run-up to Christmas, but if you're single at the moment, the combination between Venus and Pluto is asking you to fine-tune what is really important to you. And don't compromise on this. It's very important because your emotions are going to be magnified hugely when it comes to all sorts of relationships. So if you are totally invested in somebody and you're not getting that back, this is going to be extraordinarily wounding. But also, as I mentioned, the secretiveness of Pluto, which can, through its rulership of Scorpio, be very much to do with deep financial affairs like offshore funds, tax saving schemes, pensions, anything to do with banking and equities. All those things are going to be influenced a lot by the delivery of the message. So if there's a big organisation that isn't very good at public relations, they're really going to get torn to shreds this year. But also, this can be an opportunity, this aspect, to regenerate a relationship that maybe isn't quite working, but you still think it has some capacity for growth. Because remember, the regenerative energies of Pluto can be so powerful. So just bear that in mind as well. So I hope that gives you a flavour of what you can expect. Please see below for your in-depth, month-by-month zodiac forecast for year 2023. And if you want your personal horoscope forecast for the coming year, from the time you buy it, say you brought it on the 21st of January, you would get 12 months from that point. But you're also in my special package of 30% off, get your life roadmap and your 3 PDFs of your zodiac stars for the year ahead, your Chinese and Indian horoscopes too. They're completely free. Please see the link below. Or if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I don't often mention this because I tend to get quite a stream of people reaching out to me anyway. But if you would like to have a one-to-one, please also see the link below. So wishing you all the best for that karmic connection, that karmic transformation around your finances, around your sex life, your relationships, that is entirely possible for the whole of 2023.